Time's up. Okay, go. How many years did we go back? 30?
Good afternoon, Senator Saviello, Representative Welch, members of the committee. I'm Brownie Carson, no longer from Augusta, where I lived for many hours. Resident of Hartsville from, as some of you know, from 1984 until 2011. I was Executive Director of the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I'm currently on the board of Maine Conservation Voters. These two organizations share a trait with the U.S. Marine Corps, in which I served in the late 1960s, including a tour in Vietnam. They don't rest until the job is done. And on these mining rules, we will not rest until the job is done. And the job is sending these rules packing, defeating them, and going back to the drawing board. I speak in opposition today to LD146, a bill that contains, as you know, verbatim, the same mining rules that were rejected by the legislature last year. The serious deficiencies in these rules have been clearly described here today, and I won't go into them, although they're in my summaries are in my written testimony. But I would like to reference some comments made by Maine's Senator Susan Collins, who was lead speaker in a panel discussion about the health and economic impacts of climate change in Maine just last Friday in Portland. She offered thoughtful advice on how we can address that serious issue, advice that I hope you will find useful as you consider the proposed mining rules. Paraphrasing her, first, be practical. Draft legislation, or in this case, redraft rules, that actually address the issue at hand. And she said this, don't gloss over problems and don't load a bill with favors for special interests. Keep it short and clear. Second, reach across the aisle. Senator Collins argued that protecting our environment is not a Republican or a Democrat or a green cause or goal. Rather, it is a responsibility shared by all of us, regardless of party affiliation or place in the community. Third, consider the actual impact of legislation upon the lives of real people. Applying Senator Collins' advice to consideration of LD146, these mining rules do not serve the best interests of Maine people or the Maine environment. As you know from detailed comments by a broad array of conservation organizations, LD146 fails to establish a regulatory framework that holds mining companies to an appropriate and high standard of protecting groundwater and surface water. Instead, they are heavily tilted in favor of the industry that is responsible for more Superfund sites in the United States than any other. Leaking mines, like the Callahan mine in Brooksville, are polluting our water and costing taxpayers millions of dollars every year. As noted earlier, the legislature previously rejected these rules, leaving in place more protective standards. And on that point, I strenuously disagree with Stephen Panett, who testified earlier about the old regs. A bipartisan majority voted against weak rules and for clean water last year, 98 to 39 in the House, and unanimously in the Senate. In the public interest, a bipartisan majority should again vote ought not pass on LD146. And finally, as Senator Collins suggested, please look at the likely real impacts of LD146 rules in light of recent mining history in Montana, Idaho, South Dakota, and other western states. The legacy of mining is too often acid drainage contaminated with heavy metals, bankrupt mine owners, and millions of dollars each year in cleanup costs paid with tax dollars. Between 1997 and 2008, the EPA spent at least $2.2 billion on abandoned mine reclamation. That's $221 million per year. And it's already been pointed out that in Governor LePage's current year's budget, there's about a little over $1.5 million for the Callahan mine reclamation, closed over 40 years ago. Maybe mining, and I stress maybe mining can be made both profitable and safe in Maine. But LD146 rules will not accomplish that goal. We can and we must do better. Thank you.
Question? Thank you. Question, Representative Duchesne.
Not to drag it out any longer, but thank you, Senator. Just quickly, you know the situation we're in.
I do.
Okay, so we have, if we simply reject the rules and vote out not to pass. We won't give any guidance to the department on, but we'll still have a statutory requirement to come back to the rules. So just a simple rejection doesn't get us to the promised land. What's the next step we should be thinking about in order to get us to the promised land?
Representative DeShane, I think the men and women who have appeared and testified before you today, who've come to hearings before your committee before, who've come to BEP hearings, and who've testified in front of the DEP staff, have given the department all of the guidance it really needs. There are a couple of special interests on the side of passing weak rules and sacrificing our groundwater and the health and well-being of people in Aroostook County. There's a flood of public here from all over the state, especially from Aroostook County, people who work in businesses, who make things, who farm, who distribute seed potatoes. They're all saying, protect our groundwater, protect the health of our families and our children. That ought to be all the guidance that the DEP needs. If you want to coalesce it, put it into a communication from this committee, then I encourage you to do that.
Well, I guess that is my question. Do you think there's something in the face of the framework statute that we need to fix, or is the public input at another reopened rule-making session going to be sufficient?
I'm not sure that I can predict that, but you've heard what people here have to say today. You know the concerns. I wish that the Irving Company shared those concerns, but look at the history of hard rock mining and the number of bankruptcies. And look at what Irving has done. They have, in fact, as one person testifying today mentioned, they have created Aroostook Resources as the entity which is designed to mine in Aroostook County. I Googled last year when I first heard about Aroostook Resources. I found nothing. I couldn't find a corporate charter. I couldn't find a financial statement. I couldn't find any assets. Is Irving going to do to Maine, and I don't mean to dump on Irving here, but is Irving going to do to Maine what other companies are they going to do to Maine what other companies have done to other states?
Sit down. I don't want any attack of individuals in here or companies. It already started in here. I'm not going to deal with it now, so thank you very much.
Well, we all know what they're up to, Tom.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. Matt Lizzie.